Speaking of veterans, George Noory is also a veteran of the Navy, 3-time Emmy Award winner for TV news production, and, of course, came up from the bottom in talk radio to have the #1 show in his city, and then, of course, be picked up and syndicated nationwide. And he's the guy that had the courage to put me on Coast to Coast first to talk to their 16 to 20 million listeners. And that certainly helped get the info war out to another level as well. And again, I really admire people like Vince Vaughn that had the will to come out against the globalists and for the Second Amendment. And again, I mean, this is how we're going to take things back. And in the beginning, a patriot is a scarce man, hated, feared, and scorned. But when his cause succeeds, the timid join him, because then it costs nothing to be a patriot, and that is George Noory. And again, folks, I don't get most guests on and laud them for 5 minutes before they come on. I don't do this a lot with George either. It just, we have to really sit back and think about the risk everybody's taken to tell the truth. I mean, I loved Art Bell. Great guy. Riveting voice, super smart. But George Noory took the show and changed the degree of it about 100 degrees. Not 180, not 160, but about 100 degrees towards hardcore patriot, anti-New World Order, exposing vaccines. He would just read the vaccine insert on air. You know, he was the first on mainline talk radio to really start to fight so much tyranny. And I can just count how many victories we've had that George Noory was the detonator of with his audience. And his audience deserves the credit as well. But I think we should celebrate leaders who support freedom. It's not about left or right. It's about being sane. Fighting the TPP 10 years ago, George Noory was. You see, we have to understand that and appreciate it and not take this show or his show or other shows for granted. Does that mean I'm perfect? Does it mean George is perfect? No. But we want to live in a free country. We're for common sense. I think we can say we're populist, constitutional populist. Now, I've been ranting, George. I know you were coming on about world events and all the bizarre earth changes, the Ring of Fire, what's happening with the economy, much of Africa collapsing into Europe. ISIS making all these gains. I mean, there's so many things going on. TPP getting shot down so far last Friday. Huge victory. George, there's so many angles to go. Where would you like to go first in this palette I've thrown out? Or do you want to throw a curveball at us?
No curveball to you, Alex. I'll do that a little bit later. But one, thanks for having me on. Two, the best move I ever made was putting you on our show, because I got 3 million more listeners that way. Pretty smart, huh?
It certainly is, my friend. But you know you took risks doing that.
I did. I put my head in the news. You know, I have a conservative network, but they let me run with this show. And I said, I want this guy. He's different. He's patriotic. And let's do it. You know, yesterday was Flag Day. I was on the air. I do the first or second Sunday of every month. And I played the old James Cagney, "It's a Grand Old Flag" to end the show. And I've got to tell you, it brought chills up and down my spine, because that's what America's all about. It's about doing something for people and, you know, not manipulative groups and building corporations. It's for helping people. It's so many of our politicians have forgotten that. I was just listening to these clips you were playing of Hillary Clinton. And, you know, unbelievable how these people will just position themselves for power. It's disgusting. We're not going to do that. You know, we're going to be the watchdogs of everything. We went after TPP last week, and I think we helped contribute to its defeat. Let's hope it stays defeated. It's supposed to come up for another vote this week. Our next move is to insulate the power grid so that we're not up a creek if somebody launches a nuke in the atmosphere or the sun hits us with some kind of solar flare. And I'm not going to stop, Alex, and you're not going to stop either.
That's right. You've launched with a bunch of former military generals and others a national initiative. It's only a few $1 billion, what, 2 to 5, depending on which number, to harden things. We get hit by one of these EMPs or a sun, I guess a Carrington event. You're the expert, but I've had scientists on. It will blow the electrical grid and put us back in the Stone Age. And they know that. And they know we've been hit before. We were an industrialized society. And metal lining buildings, you name it, basically caught on fire Describe that threat for people that aren't aware of it.
Oh, it is unbelievable. They're predicting 90% of the Americans will die within the first year if the power grid goes out in total. This is not scary talk. This is real. This is a possibility that a rogue nation or any nation that has a nuke has the capability of detonating it in our atmosphere. It creates gamma waves, and it literally fries the electrical grid, and we have no power. The sun can do the same thing if it's got a big enough X flare that it emits, and we're not protected. Now, some states are starting to protect their own grid, so they may be self-contained. Texas is thinking about it. But in terms of the country in whole, we haven't done anything yet. We've got some great people out there, but Peter Pry, for example, has been trying to get legislators convinced, let's just do it. There's a representative out of Michigan, Fred Upton, who has been stymieing the SHIELD bill. He's been holding back. Maybe the lobby of the electrical companies, it have gotten to him. So I turned my audience loose, and they just flooded his phone line in Washington, D.C. and in Kalamazoo, Michigan. We got to get these legislators to simply say, we care about America. We care about people. This is ludicrous. Fix this thing.
Well, let me back up what you're saying there. I mean, I've had so many mainline scientists on, but as you know, the audience may not have just tuned in. They've had congressional hearings the last few years where the Pentagon admits, and that's where that 90% number comes from, that if we have a Carrington event like we had in the 1850s, we'll put that back on screen for TV viewers, that it will heat up the power lines and other systems and blow them, as happened to telegraph wires across the U.S. in 1859 and other parts of the world. So a partial Carrington event, X-flare, would blow out incredible amounts of stuff and cause amazing devastation. But a full one, we're talking Stone Age level behavior. Now, I understand folks like to say North Korea or ISIS could do it or something, and I get that if you detonated a bomb or hydrogen bomb in the atmosphere right, that it can blow out electricals, and that happened during nuclear testing. But I don't see that, George, as the big threat. I see it as the sun, because according to the physicists and astrophysicists we've had on, they believe we're overdue for another one of these Carrington events.
Oh, we are overdue. We lucked out a few years ago when a huge X-flare went out at the side of the sun. It wasn't facing us directly. Had it hit us directly, we would have had some severe problems. We lucked out there. This could happen at any day. Anytime the sun emits a huge solar flare, it could hit us. Carrington, they were lucky. They just had the telegraph system. If that same flare hit us today, Alex, you wouldn't be on the air. I wouldn't be on the air. You couldn't get to your ATMs. Gasoline stations wouldn't be able to pump. Water stations couldn't pump water to your house. It's over.
That's right. I remember a few times in the 80s and then in the 90s when I was younger. This was in the 70s and 80s. I remember my dad talking about it, and like AM radio wouldn't come in, FM barely wouldn't. They said satellites failed, gas pumps, they couldn't take credit cards inside. I remember those events. Imagine now if we get hit.
I know it. It could be just devastating, and we're going to prepare ourselves. We're going to keep going and keep pushing and devoting incredibly valuable airtime to get this done. To me personally, it's the biggest issue I have ever faced. Beyond anything else that's been going on under the table,
sure,
we have got to get this thing fixed.
Something just clicked. You know, the globalists that have hijacked our country use America to dominate the planet to a great extent, have us pay for it at our expense. If they really wanted to dominate the world, they would harden the UK, the US, and a few other countries they control, and then when one of these things inevitably hits, we'd be the only country standing. Why on earth would they not spend the couple $2 billion to harden the power centers themselves? Explain what would be done to harden it.
Well, technically, we've got the engineering to do it. The estimate is about $2 billion to fix the power grid, make sure that things are Faraday caged, that transmitters are taken care of, that everything we've got is fixed, insulated, and that's all doable. Our engineering is excellent. $2 billion is no money compared with what they spent just during the bailouts in 2008. I mean, let's do it. I would, as a taxpayer.
Isn't it basically just, from the engineers I've had on, a surge protector at the power plants and at the power relay centers in between the lines and the final equipment, so if it hits, you don't blow up all the equipment and so it doesn't cause a chain reaction?
That's most of it. That's most of it. But you'd still have to do it in individual states. But it's easy to do. It's the technology's there, the manpower's there, and my God, one day it's going to happen. And the nation that has not protected itself is literally toast.
It will look like the Pentagon predicts, and I agree with them, like The Road. Viggo Mortensen's a listener. He's been on. But have you ever seen The Road? Came out about 8 years ago.
Yes, I did. But this is going to be worse than Mad Max.
Well, I mean, they believe in a collapse of society, even a total economic collapse. Within 15 days, most people become cannibals. And most people don't even know how to wipe their noses now. They're not self-sufficient. It's a very entitled society, living off a bunch of hardworking people. Can you imagine all these entitled, spoiled brats during a collapse, George?
Oh, unbelievable. There was an old Twilight Zone show called The Shelter, Alex, where this guy had a fallout shelter, and that was very prevalent in the 1960s. Well, his neighbors all knew he had a shelter. They knew that he had water put away and food put away, and he was ready in case the Soviet Union at the time launched. Well, guess what? An alarm went off that a nuke had been detonated, and everybody was trying to break down his fallout shelter while he and his family were in it to get to him. They all wanted in. And that's what's going to happen here. People are going to go ballistic. The haves and the have-nots are going to go at it with each other. It's going to be unbelievable. A nightmare beyond biblical proportions.
You're absolutely right. I mean, government itself is digging in. Elites are running to New Zealand. All the billionaires have left Israel. We saw this coming way back, that things are unsustainable. And you add to all of that they're blocking new technologies and things. Now more than ever, people need to get prepared, because I can feel it in my bones. Oh, this is the question I wanted to ask you, and why I wanted to get you on a few weeks ago. Everybody, and when I say everybody, I mean everybody I talk to, but separate people at restaurants and at hotels, I'll hear them talking, going, yeah, everybody feels like something bad's coming. I can feel it. And intellectually, we can then see the reasons for that. But is it war with Russia? Is it economic collapse? Is it that people are awakening and we feel kind of that group consciousness of concern? Or do you disagree? You don't think something big is coming? What's your take?
Oh, I've been saying for a couple of years now, Alex, that something big is happening and that people have been acting strange, weird. You've seen it. You just talked about it. And they sense something. There's something out there in the cosmos, this wireless internet that we're all connected to, that is telling us something big is about to happen. I had a story about a rabbi on last night who in Israel, he was in Haifa, Israel. He went into the cave, which apparently was the cave of the prophet Elijah. And he claims that he came out and was told by the prophet that Israel will sustain soon a huge war and that many would die. I mean, these are frightening prophecies. We're not making this stuff up. These are people who are legitimate in what they do. Everybody's talking about something that's going to happen. I mean, the United States moving military equipment to Europe. I mean, this is shades of the Cuban Missile Crisis all over again. Do you think Putin's going to allow that?
Well,
Probably not.
George, the older you get, the more you learn to follow your gut. And my gut's never wrong. And I've never had my gut this concerned. I mean, my spider sense is redlining every day now. It's just getting so intense. And everybody else I talk to says the same thing. What do you think it is? I mean, I'm getting chills right now.
Honestly?
Yes.
I think we're on the brink of a third world war. A war that nukes may be used, that will change the face of this planet for the rest of our lives. If we do have the rest of our lives. I mean, I've got 6 grandchildren, Alex. I adore them. I want them to have a future. I still think there's a piece of me that because of all of us and the way we think, we can get through this. But some of these leaders just don't seem to get it. I mean, they just don't seem to get it. If you ever go to Vegas, I mean, you see people of all walks of life. You see people from Africa, China, the rest of Asia. You see Russians. You see Americans. You see people from Mexico. They're all out there having fun. You sit down, you play a little blackjack next to somebody from two different countries. They don't want war. They don't want you dead. Yet there's something else afoot here that I just don't get. ISIS, for example. These people are driving with new trucks, new Humvees, waving their black flags. Why isn't anybody taking them out? They're right out there. It doesn't make any sense. Generals during World War II would have had that thing destroyed by now. Today, there's a different thing. There's something else going on here. I can't put my finger on it yet.
Well, it's a global destabilization, and criminal elements in Western governments have been funding radical jihadis to destabilize. And then you tie in now Africa collapsing after Hillary's invasion of Libya, which she brags she came, she saw, he died. And now thousands a day are streaming across into Europe. They're now getting to the Channel, and the British government is allowing them to basically hijack trucks and drive through into England. I mean, this is getting insane. It's like an evil force wants to collapse the world, George.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. Look, Saddam Hussein, not a Boy Scout, kept things in check. Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, not a Boy Scout, kept things in check. Mubarak in Egypt, not a Boy Scout, kept things in check. The Middle East is a different animal. It cannot run the way we run our democracy. It just doesn't happen that way. We should have realized that a long time ago. Instead, we wanted to topple these regimes, and we've got a disaster on our hands. I mean, we cannot fix that problem. I don't care how many troops we might have to start sending back in. We can't fix it.
All we can do is contain it. But George, if you pull back, criminal elements that want to destabilize, want a war on the police, you name it, it's the same picture everywhere, the same MO. They want this crisis. Then they're going to use the threat of al-Qaeda and ISIS to take our freedoms domestically, and we're back at the Hegelian dialectic.
That's exactly right. I mean, who do you trust? Even if we lived in a world of total peace, there'd be some groups that I would not trust who would want to disrupt our way of living, and they would create false flags just to keep things going. The elitists do not want stability.
They do not. George Noory, coasttocoastam.com. Stay with us. ConspiracyCulture.com is putting on an event up in Canada that I'll be attending. We'll tell you about that. BeyondBelief.com is his TV show. George Noory is our guest. He's launching something new as well that he's about to tell us about here on air today. Then I want to get into the economy with George Noory. I want to get into these riots going on, police brutality, George Soros involved, where he thinks all that's going. Russia says it will retaliate if U.S. weapons stationed on its borders, hence the war pigs coming in. Nobody's saying Russia's perfect. Nobody's saying Vladimir Putin's a sweetheart. They're not offensively over here, though. The West, Samantha Powers gave a speech last week in Ukraine threatening the Russians. I mean, this is unprecedented even in the Cold War. What has changed? Why are our leaders so arrogant? We'll ask George Noory that as well. But, George, first off, I heard you're launching something new. Well, first, let's get into Toronto. I'm excited. I was at one event you did at 590 years ago. I've been at a few other things with you. These things are always sellout crowds. I've been a video guest at two of the other events. Tell us what's coming up in Toronto.
Oh, this is exciting. Yes, over the last couple of years, Alex, you've been our guest via Skype, and they just love you in Toronto. But this time on August 22nd, we've got our very live stage show event, and you'll be there with me. Nick Pope will be there talking about UFOs, a full-packed audience at the Queen Elizabeth Theater, and you get a chance for the first time to hear me sing on stage, which is going to be fun.
You're a great singer, by the way. I've seen it via Skype. It's pretty good.
I've had some fun. But if people in the greater Toronto area, or even Americans, want to come to Toronto, it's a gorgeous city. Just go to GeorgeNooryLive.com. They're selling tickets, or they've already sold, Alex. The mere mention of your name, in 2 days, they sold 150 tickets. Just like that.
Well, that's exciting, and I can't wait to see you in person. That's the real reason I'm going up there, is to hang out with you and Tom and the rest of the crew, because you guys are a lot of fun as well.
We're going to have a great time. So GeorgeNooryLive.com for the Toronto event. It's August 22nd, and all you need to do, folks, is bring your passport, and in you go. And Alex, I'm sure they'll let you into the country, right?
Well, that's the only issue, is I need a letter saying I'm speaking there. I mean, last time they held me for 15 hours, said I was arrested. It made it all over the papers. Then they had to release me to cover Bilderberg. Maybe they'll let me speak. I'm going to be like, I'm back. I'm just here to speak. I'm not bad, but we'll see.
Unbelievable. Yeah, we'll get you in some way or another. And then the other thing that we have just launched, I've got to tell you this. At these same events, people would come up to me and they would say, I need to meet somebody who understands me, who gets me, who knows conspiracies or about life after death. And I just can't find somebody. Help us. So after hearing that at another event, I said, okay, from here on in, we are starting a dating service for people. Ironically, today, the country of Iran has set up a matchmaking site. But we've got paranormaldate.com. Paranormaldate.com. For people with like minds, it's free to sign up. If for some reason they decide to stay there and they want to hook up with people, use my name, George, in the code, and it's like $4.98 a month, $4 or something like that. But
it's a great idea, and
it's growing.
When I first heard the name, I'm glad it's a success. I thought maybe I could date Slimer or Casper. Because
you just might.
Oh, I'm not gay, but does it matter if it's Ghost?
You can have ghosts. You can have Bigfoot. You can date anybody you want, Alex.
Good.
Anytime.
Well, I demand that they then have equal marriage for me so I can marry Bigfoot.
Well, that's doable. We'll do it live on my show.
That's a joke before the New York Times quotes us. We're having some fun. Oh, my goodness.
But they say it's the fastest-growing dating site they've ever seen, and it continues to grow. And we decided we wanted sign-up members to be free. And then if people decide, hey, I want to stay here, I want to hook up with somebody, I want to meet someone, go ahead and do what you do with the membership. So it's paranormaldate.com, paranormaldate.com. And again, for all your listeners, if they use the code name George, if they decide to stay on it, it'll give them a substantial discount.
Well, I love it. It's a great idea, George. You're a great entrepreneur as well, best-selling author, you name it. George Noory, the syndicated radio host and TV host, joins us right now, shifting gears out of that fun news. I'm out of the closet. I like Slimer, folks. It's from Ghostbusters. In fact, let's put my secret boyfriend up on screen. Can you guys, I wasn't planning to do this today, but I'm going to come out of the closet today. Maybe it'll be as big as Bruce Jenner having a sex change. I actually am dating Slimer. And you can actually see a scene of it in the new upcoming Ghostbusters movie. Okay, I'm being sarcastic. Have you guys Googled Slimer yet? Can we show him coming down the hall, please? This is my attempt at humor, which I will engage to impromptu at the event. But your guest, though, is a really serious researcher. He was pretty high level in the Ministry of Defense. Tell us about that guy. Tell us, yeah.
The Nick Pope Ministry of I had a little lag there. But Nick Pope was in the British Ministry of Defense. He looked at UFO files. He investigated them, and he's just a riveting guest. He's a no-nonsense guy, and he's going to tell the audience, well, I'm not going to tell them everything that he's going to tell them, but he has seen things that nobody has seen in those files, and he's going to talk about that. But he's a great guest. He's been a guest on Coast to Coast for years now, Alex, and he's just a superb UFO investigator. And again, he was there. He was in the Ministry of Defense in Britain, and he saw things, and they're real.
Well, George, speaking of UFOs, it's such a giant galaxy, and we know there's billions of galaxies that Hubble has photographed. We understand all that. Clearly, we're probably not alone. But you go see a movie like Interstellar, which is long but excellent, where it's actually humans from the future trying to save the Earth, and that kind of creates that time warp loop continuum that's so fascinating. But I'm really concerned about Project Bluebeam that's been partially declassified, and Iron Mountain and other plans to unify the planet under world government with a fake UFO landing. And with the CG and with the technology we know that they've suppressed, they could easily do that with animatronics. We see the Pope getting everybody ready, saying, you know, God has other flocks, aliens are probably real. We see the Vatican getting folks ready. I mean, I really see this preparation in movies and culture pushing this. What's your take on that?
Oh, you are so right on. You know, they want to fake eventually. It's like the day the earth stood still. They're going to want us to flock to government begging for help. Oh, my God, the extraterrestrials are here. They're going to eat us. They're going to take us. They're going to capture us. Please, governments, please do what you can. And under this guise, this is incredible, of using holograms and everything else, they're going to, they think we're going to flock to them for help like sheeple going underneath a tree during a storm. And I don't think it's going to work. I think people are so tuned into this already through shows like yours and mine that they're going to look at this and go, ha, they faked it. And but they're going to make it as realistic as possible.
Sure.
They might even have some fake alien, you know, standing next to President Obama saying, you know, we are taking over your planet now. And it's going to be unbelievable.
It'll be like The Simpsons. It's a two-headed monster, but as long as you vote for one of the heads, everything's okay. There's the headline. Vatican astronomer says alien life will be discovered, but will not prove or disprove God. Speaking of the big questions, I knew Raymond Teague, who died last year, who was on the front line of the NASA Apollo missions. You can watch the film footage. He's right up there in mission control, controlling the cameras on the spacecraft, on the lander, and so much more. He basically ran Skylab. It was also classified that he came over my house a lot. He'd say, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to tell you. And then he couldn't say it. But he said, listen, we went to the moon, but we have some advanced stuff they didn't want the Russians to know we had. You saw most of the mission, but basically it was linking up with other stuff. And then he just said, I'll get killed if I tell you. And I mean, he really was on the front line of NASA. And he would get really upset when he even talked about it with me. I met with him at a hotel, actually the former SAC base at the Hilton, for a hamburger whenever he was picking up some family that was in town. He said, can you meet me there? And he was going to tell me stuff right before he died because he'd had another heart attack. He was going in for surgery. His heart blew up like 2 weeks later. Oh. And he's just, you know what, I'm not going to tell you. It's too dangerous. He said, I care about you, Alex. They'll kill you. So to the government, he never told me what it was. He just said, look, we went to the moon. Well, separately, they say this, the SR-71 Blackbird is the fastest plane in the world. It was in service in 55. Who believes that? We know they're suppressing technologies. We know that they've gotten really arrogant about these technologies. But how advanced is the secret space program? And from all your research, who do you think's really running things in this global government? And are they so arrogant now with the Russians and others because they've got such super weapons? Or is it just old-fashioned arrogance?
Well, I think it's arrogance and it's power, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. I think we've been to the moon. There's no question we've been to the moon. I've interviewed too many astronauts. These people aren't lying to me, Alex. But the question is have we been back to the moon since? And were we there back a long time ago? I think that's possible on both fronts. I think high technology existed on Earth millions of years ago.
Atlantis,
you name it. I think we went to the moon millions of years ago, and that we have structures on the moon.
Well, you know, Plato wrote about Atlantis like it was real and flying machines and everything.
Oh, that's absolutely. Yeah, you know, in India, they had the Vimanas, which were flying machines. I mean, they clearly wrote about it. Pictures in Abydos in Egypt, you will see what looks like a helicopter and a submarine and a flying apparatus. I mean, it happened. We had whether it was extraterrestrial technology or ours, we had the ability to do these things. Something happened on the planet where everybody got obliterated, and we started all over again. And that's a lesson for all of us, because good old planet Earth regenerates itself. And, you know, we could all get wiped out. Every building you see today would crumble to dust. And in 100 million years, it could start all over again.
Well, I agree with you, and I don't like to get into speculation because then the media runs off with that and demonizes me. I can't get folks to admit FEMA camps when they're called Emergency Centers Establishment Act, Civilian Inmate Labor Camp Program. Geoengineering's admitted, but they go, oh, that doesn't exist. So I can't get folks to admit what exists. And in the area of research, you know, there are some kooks out there, some charlatans, but also a lot of real folks. I was in L.A. even after he'd been on the show, and I talked to Buzz Aldrin at length. And then after this happened, he didn't say I couldn't talk about it. But after I talked about it, I guess he got in some trouble and won't come back on. But Buzz Aldrin came on this show and never told anybody else this. It's online. And said, oh, yeah, you know, the same aliens that built Egypt, they're the ones that have got an obelisk, that's what we based the movie on, 2001. It's out on the moon, the small moon of Mars. Mars has one little moon. And, yeah, and by the way, and then next I talked to him a few months later, I'm out in L.A., and he goes, this is over the phone, on speakerphone. He goes, Alex, in about 6 months, they're going to crash a probe in looking for water on the moon. The truth is, we already found it. We're just going to let them think they found it, but we're sending them there with the probe. We got a secret deal with the Indians, and we want them to have this fine. But there's a whole ocean of water, basically all under the moon, and that's all I can tell you. And I mean, I'm talking to Buzz Aldrin, and then 6 months later, it happens, and they find the water, and it's a whole ocean, which shows we were just told something they knew. We now know, they've released the text out of Portugal, that they knew what the Americas were. The Vikings had been here. The Chinese were doing trade with the Aztecs and people. I mean, the truth is, the elite, the Illuminati, already know all this history. They've kept it from us. I mean, Buzz Aldrin told me publicly that aliens built the pyramids on this show. Have you ever heard that clip?
Did. And they did, absolutely. It was incredible. There's nothing that we have on this planet that could have built the pyramids in those days. We didn't have 100,000 Egyptians pulling ropes. It just didn't happen that way. There was some other kind of incredible technology, and I believe it was extraterrestrial. I had interviewed Zahi Hawass, who was the antiquities director. Not anymore. He got tossed out after Mubarak fell apart. But, you know, you bring up the thought of ETs to him, he's livid. He'll chase you up and down with a baseball bat. I mean, he believes so much that Egyptians did this, and there's no way. There's just no way they could have done that. So many mysteries on this planet, Alex, that just boggle the mind, including, of course, the conspiracies that you and I deal with on a nightly basis as well.
Sure. Well, they claim the step pyramids were practiced, then they built the big ones, but now scientists, as you know, have tested them. No, the little ones are humans trying to make them, trying to copy the real ones.
Yes.
It is just so bizarre. And again, folks, I don't even get into all this because people can't even deal with basic reality like Bilderberg Group existing. Hey, George, what do you make of us, 13 years ago or whatever, talking about Bilderberg and nobody knowing about it, and then now it's admitted it exists?
You have pinpointed exactly what's going on this planet. We are years, and have been years, ahead of ourselves, that people are now beginning to get caught up. And I'm amazed. I had Daniel Estalon, and who was very complimentary about you, by the way, on my show last week. And we were talking about the Bilderberg's conference in Austria and how that they're so public now. On one hand, they've got their website up. They put down who some of the members are, yet some of the other people, it's clouded in secrecy. They try to jam reporters. They don't want people in. You can't really report on what they're talking about because they want it to be a free airing conference within. But we were years ahead of ourselves. And you, of course, you were the pioneer about this.
Well, I mean, you get a lot of credit, but separate from credit, we were right is what matters. We're not making this stuff up is the point. And it comes down to that we're being lied to. We don't claim to have all the answers. We're simply looking for the truth and try to be honest. And that's the difference. George Noory, coasttocoastam.com. I'll be speaking with him coming up in a few months in Canada. Look forward to seeing you all up there. I'm going to leave this totally wild card. I've got a bunch of topics I want to raise, but when we come back, I'm going to just let George bring up what else he thinks is important. It'll be a surprise for all of us. Straight ahead, the final segment of the transmission with George Noory. I'm Alex Jones with Infowars.com. Spread the word. Police release pre-crime smartphone app. Can't make that up. Shock video. Rioting migrants attempt to hijack trucks heading for UK. They do hijack them. David Cameron's clueless on Magna Carta. Doesn't know what it is. This is its 800th anniversary today. The 15th day of June, 2015. And, of course, it was way back in 1215 that the Magna Carta took place. And I even saw an article demonizing Magna Carta. I'm going to do a report on this for the news. Demonizing Magna Carta by NPR, saying that it's backwards and horrible. Of course, it's not perfect today. It was the first evolution of power going to the people. Simply amazing. That's some of the news on Infowars.com. Don't forget, we have high-quality products, the best water filters, the best non-GMO seeds, the best storable foods, highest quality, the best systems, the best books and films and nutraceuticals like Survival Shield, Nascent Iodine X2 that's back in for a limited time, available at InfoWarsStore.com or InfoWarsLife.com. And it is your shopping with the good guys that helps us fund this operation. Revolutionary in talk radio and TV that we're self-funding thanks to your help. So God bless you. We really appreciate you. InfoWarsLife.com. George Noory, we got 4 minutes left. You've got the floor. What else do you want to release on the public?
Well, there are a lot of things, as we've been talking about, Alex, that are going on, but I want to once again talk about the power grid, and I would hope that everybody listening to me right now contacts their congressperson, their senator, and simply says, listen, you've got to protect the power grid. The SHIELD bill, which is out there floating around somewhere, we've got to get it to a vote, and for $2 billion, which is chump change, let's secure the integrity of our infrastructure and our country. It is so important to our children and to the future of this nation. We have got to do it. It is by far one of the simplest things to fix of what could be one of the most tragic events ever, and I just don't get it. I don't understand why this government, why some political candidate isn't using this as a platform. Newt Gingrich wanted to do it back when he was toying with running, but of course, he fell on deaf ears. We've got to get people convinced to do this. $2 billion is nothing, Alex, for the preservation of the United States.
You're right, and you would think the elite that spends so much time trying to dominate the public to secure their power would want to do something to shield them from a mass coronal ejection, a super X flare hitting the Earth and blowing out the telecommunications on the ground. It just sounds like a total no-brainer that they would do that. Is there some reason that they know something we don't know, that they don't care? Are any other governments hardening their power grid?
What if the rumors of reducing the world's population from 7 billion to 500 million are true, and that the globalists and the elitists have already built their bunkers that are fully contained with generators and power systems and food and water, and that they're okay, and that these places are located strategically all around this world for them? And so they go in when this happens, lock themselves in, they stay for 6 months or a year, they come out to a devastated planet, and then they start rebuilding all over again. Does it sound far-fetched? Ludicrous? I don't know. Maybe not.
I think it's happening, and they're building emergency secret seed banks, DNA arcs. I think you're hit on the big enchilada. George Noory, coasttocoastam.com. Thank you so much.